Picture this, if you will. You're out on a lonely stretch of desert in West Texas. It's vast, it's rugged, and as the sun finally dips below the mountains, this incredibly thick, enveloping darkness completely takes over. But out there, way off in the distance, that darkness is broken. Strange, glowing lights just appear on the horizon, exactly like they have for generations. Witnesses watch as these things float silently across the terrain, shifting colors, splitting apart, and then just vanishing, literally without a single trace. Now, scientists have investigated them for years, UFO hunters have flocked to them, and yet, after decades of dedicated research, nobody can definitively explain what they actually are. So in this explainer, we're diving deep into one of America's most baffling and enduring paranormal mysteries, the Marfa Lights.
Right deep in the heart of this rugged landscape, you'll find the small, isolated town of Marfa. Now, surrounded by these huge expanses of desert and framed by distant mountains, the area during the day is incredibly quiet. It's almost intensely peaceful. But man, the story totally flips when darkness falls. As that deep, pitch-black night sets in, something extraordinary frequently pops up near the horizon. Mysterious glowing lights. And this isn't a new thing either. The very first recorded sighting actually dates all the way back to 1883. A young cowhand named Robert Reed saw them and just assumed he was looking at the campfires of Apache Native Americans. But when he rode out to investigate the next morning, nothing. No ashes, no footprints, absolutely zero evidence of a camp. For decades since that very night, literally spanning generations now, travelers, locals, seasoned ranchers, and a whole lot of curious tourists have all reported seeing these bright orbs moving across the desert floor. It's this long-standing visual phenomenon that completely transforms a quiet desert into an active stage for the unexplained.
So, that brings us to the absolutely crucial question, the one we're all here to answer. What is actually hiding in the Texas darkness? Remember, this isn't just some fleeting rumor or a ghost story told around a fire. It's a heavily documented, generational experience. We have decades of research and thousands of eyewitness accounts, yet we are still asking this exact same question. What is it about these lights that makes them so incredibly difficult to pin down? Well, to understand the sheer magnitude of this mystery, we really need to look closely at what folks are actually experiencing out there in the desert night.
Section 1. Strange Lights in Texas. To really wrap our heads around the Marfa Lights, we have to look past the local legends and focus on the raw eyewitness reports. What are everyday people, travelers, locals, maybe people just like you, actually seeing when they pull over to the side of the highway and stare out at that dark horizon? Unlike ordinary distant lights, which usually just look like a faint yellowish twinkle, witnesses describe a vibrant, incredibly dynamic display. Sure, some observers do say the lights are white, but a ton of others report seeing brilliant shades of red, blue, yellow, and orange. Just imagine those intense, vibrant colors totally popping against the absolute pitch-black canvas of the Texas desert. It's not just a static, boring image. It's a colorful, active light show that instantly tells anyone watching that they are definitely not looking at a typical street lamp.
But here's the thing, the crazy colors are just the beginning. The actual behavior of these orbs is what makes conventional explanations so incredibly hard to swallow. First off, these lights don't just sit there. They actively float, completely silently, through the darkness. Then, and this is where it gets really weird, they split apart into multiple distinct objects. And finally, just as quickly as they split, they merge right back together and vanish without a trace. Poof, gone. Witnesses swear the lights seem to have a mind of their own. They definitely aren't behaving like static reflections or regular lamps. This dynamic, totally unpredictable movement is exactly why the mystery has stubbornly endured for so long.
Section 2. The 1980s sightings boom.
Now, for a really long time, the Marfa Lights were kind of just a local secret, a strange little quirk of the West Texas landscape that was mostly just known to the ranchers and the folks who worked the land. But things shifted in a massive way in the late 20th century. Word began to spread throughout Texas, and suddenly the secret was totally out. During the early 1980s, reports of the phenomenon absolutely skyrocketed. Hundreds of visitors started flocking to Marfa, all of them hoping to witness these glowing spheres for themselves. And guess what? A lot of them claimed they absolutely did. This massive influx of tourists brought in a whole new wave of eyewitness accounts. People described glowing spheres hovering just inches above the desert floor. Some of these spheres would just sit there, completely stationary, but then, without any warning whatsoever, others would dart rapidly in entirely unexpected directions. And again, witnesses kept seeing them splitting apart and merging back together. This explosion of sightings in the 1980s is really what cemented the Marfa Lights as a staple of American paranormal lore.
Section 3. The Scientific Investigations.
Okay, so with public interest absolutely peaking, the scientific community could no longer just sit back and ignore what was happening out in West Texas. Researchers finally descended on the area. They brought cameras, highly sensitive measuring equipment, and fully dedicated observation teams to try and put this mystery to bed once and for all. So, what did they actually find? Well, one of the leading theories they proposed is something called temperature inversions. It's a pretty fascinating atmospheric effect. Basically, unique layers of hot and cold desert air can interact and act almost like a giant invisible lens. They can actually bend light over vast, vast distances, which has the potential to create some very unusual visual illusions. The running theory here is that light from distant sources, stuff way, way beyond the horizon, is being bent and projected right into the viewer's line of sight by these inversions. It essentially tricks the eye into thinking there's a floating orb right nearby.
Building right on top of that inversion theory, scientists also pointed out that distant vehicle headlights from faraway highways might be the actual source of these illusions. And this right here, this creates a truly fascinating tug-of-war debate. On the one hand, observations of distant vehicle headlights actually match the scientific theories perfectly. In fact, some researchers were even able to directly correlate highway traffic patterns with some of the specific lights seen from the official viewing center. Makes sense, right? But on the other hand, so many witness reports simply refuse to fit neatly into that scientific mold. Certain witnesses described movements, like rapid vertical ascents shooting straight up into the sky, intelligent dodging, or that splitting and merging in midair we talked about, that seem entirely, literally impossible for normal vehicle headlights or simple atmospheric reflections. So while the science definitely explains a good chunk of the sightings, the core mystery remains stubbornly unsolved.
Section 4. Paranormal and UFO theories. Because scientific explanations like temperature inversions and headlights leave so many questions lingering in the dark, the pendulum naturally swings pretty hard in the totally opposite direction. Not everyone was ready to just accept the scientific explanations, and honestly, the remote, hyper-isolated nature of the Texas desert provided incredibly fertile ground for entirely different kinds of theories. UFO enthusiasts and paranormal researchers started proposing some truly wild possibilities. We're talking extraterrestrial visitors. I mean, a desolate, pitch-black desert does seem like the perfect undisturbed landing pad, right? Some witnesses even claim the orbs displayed genuine intelligent behavior, appearing to actively react to a human's presence by quickly darting away if you get too close. Then you have paranormal researchers suggesting they might be ancient spirits, completely unknown energy fields native to the Earth itself, or maybe even interdimensional phenomena bleeding into our world. The theory is absolutely multiplied. The definitive evidence, however, well, it did not. Yet, as you can probably imagine, public fascination only continued to skyrocket.
Section 5. An enduring desert mystery. As we moved into the modern era, the whole landscape of the investigation changed entirely. People weren't just bringing their eyes to Marfa anymore, they were bringing incredibly high-powered lenses. Visitors started capturing actual photographs and video footage, and suddenly, images of these mysterious glowing objects began circulating widely across newspapers and television programs. But interestingly enough, having better technology didn't actually end the debate. It just kind of changed the arguments. Believers look at the footage and argue that it finally proves the phenomenon is a real, tangible anomaly that we just don't understand yet. Skeptics, meanwhile, counter that cameras, especially when you're shooting at night over incredibly long distances, can easily misinterpret, blur, or totally distort distant, mundane light sources. We are essentially looking at the exact same evidence, but arriving at two entirely opposite conclusions.
And honestly, that beautifully and frustratingly summarizes the current state of affairs when it comes to the Marfa Lights. Thousands of witnesses, countless images, zero definitive answers. Despite decades of throwing scientific equipment at the problem, despite everyone having high-definition video in their pockets, and despite generations of eyewitness testimony from completely reliable locals and visitors, no single piece of evidence has provided a definitive, universally accepted answer. The Marfa Lights remain just incredibly, frustratingly elusive, but they continue to attract visitors from all over the globe. Some people arrive as hardened skeptics ready to debunk the whole thing. Others arrive desperately hoping to witness something extraordinary, but almost all of them leave with way more questions than answers.
And so, as we wrap up this explainer, I've got to turn the question right back to you. What do you think is going on out there? Are these glowing orbs simply a rare, massive atmospheric illusion created by unique environmental conditions? Or do they represent something far stranger, something that science simply has yet to understand? Whatever you believe, one fact remains absolutely undeniable. The Marfa Lights are still among America's greatest unsolved mysteries. Until a complete, airtight explanation finally emerges, those glowing orbs in West Texas are going to continue to captivate the imagination of anyone brave enough to watch the desert after dark. Keep asking those big questions, keep digging for answers, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.